You feel it in your body before you can explain it. The relationship gets weirdly calm and you get nervous. That is not love. That is withdrawal. Quick thing before we go further. We are building toward 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps this channel reach people who actually use psychology to see clearly. And if this hits a nerve, tap like so the algorithm stops burying it. Now let us name what most people never name. Some relationships do not run on compatibility, shared values, or even affection. They run on tension the way a cheap engine runs on friction. The tension is not a side effect. It is the fuel. And the reason it is so hard to spot is that your brain can mislabel tension as chemistry, mislabel anxiety as desire, and mislabel relief as intimacy. If you have ever been in something where the best moments felt earned, like you survived something together, and the worst moments felt strangely familiar, you are not crazy. You are watching a system regulate itself, not toward safety, toward arousal. Here is the first sign, and it is more technical than people think. In a healthy bond, conflict is information. In a tension bond, conflict is regulation. That sounds subtle, but it changes everything. Think about this for a second. When two people have a stable baseline of closeness, disagreement is something you solve and then you return to baseline. But when a relationship runs on tension, there is no stable baseline. The baseline is unsettled. So the nervous system goes looking for a way to feel something predictable. That is the mechanism behind we fight. Then we have the best sex, or after we almost break up, we feel so close. The closeness is not proof of love. It is the rebound effect of threat leaving the room. Your brain releases relief chemicals, and you interpret that relief as connection. Not because you are naive, because your brain is doing what brains do. It tags contrast as meaning. And notice the trap. If peace feels flat, you assume the relationship is dying, so you unconsciously provoke friction just to feel alive again. Not because you want pain, but because your system has learned a specific equation. Intensity equals security. If it feels intense, it feels real. Now here is where it gets interesting. The intensity is often created by one of two tension technologies, and most couples use them without realizing. The first is ambiguity. The second is intermittent reinforcement. Ambiguity is when you never fully know where you stand. You get warmth, then distance. You get praise, then criticism. You get I miss you followed by silence. The key is not that it hurts. The key is that it makes you monitor. Your attention becomes a surveillance system. You start scanning tone, punctuation, response time, facial microshifts. And attention is expensive. When you spend that much attention on someone, your brain concludes they must be valuable. That is basic cognitive dissonance. If I am working this hard, it must matter. If it matters, it must be love. But it could just be a nervous system trying to solve an unpredictable environment. Intermittent reinforcement is even more brutal. It is the same schedule that makes gambling addictive. When rewards are unpredictable, and dopamine spikes higher, not lower. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical, it is the pursuit chemical. It does not say this is good. It says, keep going, you might get it. So a relationship that runs on tension will often feel like you are always about to arrive, always about to finally be chosen, finally be understood, finally be stable. But you never quite arrive because arriving would end the chase, and the chase is what keeps the bond chemically alive. Let me show you what I mean with a simple test. Ask yourself, do you feel more bonded after clarity or after confusion resolves? In a secure relationship, clarity is soothing and bonding. In a tension relationship, clarity is almost disappointing. You get an apology, you get reassurance, and a part of you goes, okay. Now what? That now what is your addiction to activation. Second sign, your relationship has a crisis economy. It creates problems because problems justify closeness. If you have noticed that you only have deep talks during breakdowns, that you only feel like a team when something is on fire, you are not in a partnership. You are in a co-managed emergency. This happens because of something called misattribution of arousal. Your body cannot always tell why it is activated. If your heart is racing because you are anxious, and then your partner texts, your brain can link the arousal to them. The partner becomes the object that explains the state. That is how fear turns into obsession. That is how instability turns into spark. And the relationship quietly trains you. If you want attention, create urgency. If you want tenderness, threaten distance. If you want reassurance, become unreadable. People rarely do this consciously. It is emergent behavior. Like two people dancing, and the dance selects the steps that keep the music going. The music is adrenaline. Now watch the next layer, because this is the part that makes smart people stay way too long. In a tension-based relationship, your identity gets involved. You do not just want the person, you want to win the meaning. Meaning is the currency here. Every withdrawal from them feels like a verdict about your value. Every small moment of warmth feels like you redeemed yourself, so you stop evaluating the relationship and start evaluating yourself inside the relationship. That is the most dangerous pivot, because once the relationship becomes a mirror for your self-worth, leaving does not feel like ending a romance. It feels like admitting you are not enough. People will tolerate almost anything to avoid that conclusion. So how do you identify that this is happening? Look for scorekeeping that does not sound like scorekeeping, not "I did the dishes." That is obvious. I mean psychological scorekeeping. After everything I have put up with, you owe me trust. You do not get to be upset because of what you did last month. These are not arguments. These are invoices. When love runs on tension, people start converting emotions into debt. And debt creates power games. Because if I can prove you are the debtor, I can control the terms of the relationship without saying the word control. Here is a clean indicator. Are you often arguing about the current issue, or are you arguing about who gets to be the injured party? In healthy conflict, people protect the relationship. In tension conflict, people protect their rank. Now stay with me, because the next part recontextualizes everything I just said. Tension relationships are not always about a villain and a victim. Sometimes both people are addicted to the role the relationship gives them. One person gets to be the pursuer, the one who cares more, the one who fights for it. That can feel noble. The other gets to be the avoider, the one who is independent, the one who cannot be controlled. That can feel powerful, and both roles protect against a deeper fear: ordinary intimacy. Ordinary intimacy is boring in the way clean water is boring. It has no drama, no tests, no proof. It just is. And if you grew up in an environment where attention was inconsistent or affection had strings, calm can feel suspicious. Or your nervous system does not read calm as safe. It reads calm as the moment before something goes wrong. So you create tension as a kind of sonar. You poke the water to see what comes back. If it splashes, it means there is something there. If it stays still, you feel alone. Third sign, the relationship has maintenance fights. Fights that function like routine servicing. You can tell because they follow a cycle. A small trigger, then escalation, then shutdown, then reunion, then a brief honeymoon, then the slow reappearance of irritability. The content changes, the structure stays identical. That is not a compatibility problem, that is a regulatory loop. And here is the uncomfortable insight: the relationship will often get worse when life gets better. When you have more stability, more free time, more calm, suddenly you start nitpicking. See, suddenly one person feels off because the relationship is missing its stimulant. This is why some couples sabotage vacations. It is why peace after moving in can trigger chaos. It is why after an engagement, suddenly there is a giant fight about nothing. The system panics when tension drops, because tension was the glue. Now I want to give you a diagnostic that cuts through all the storytelling. It is not about how intense your feelings are. It is about what your relationship does to your attention, your time, and your nervous system. Ask 3 questions. First, do you spend more time interpreting than experiencing? If you are always decoding, you are not relating. You are managing uncertainty. Second, do you feel calmer when they are not around? If absence feels like nervous system relief, the bond is not soothing you. It is stimulating you. Third, does resolution feel like intimacy or like sedation? In a tension relationship, resolution feels like your brain finally stops buzzing. You feel quiet, not close. And that matters. Now here is the midpoint twist, and if you get this, you will spot tension-based relationships in seconds. Tension bonds are not primarily emotional. They are attentional. The currency is not love. The currency is focus. Who gets your focus gets your life. And tension is one of the fastest ways to steal focus because it creates open loops. Your mind hates unfinished business. It will keep replaying conversations, imagining alternative endings, planning the next message. That is the Zeigarnik effect. Incomplete tasks stick in memory. A tension relationship is basically one long incomplete task, so the relationship becomes sticky. Not because it is deep, but because it is unresolved. And a lot of people confuse stickiness with destiny. Now let us build the payoff framework. I call it the tension engine, and it has 4 parts. If all 4 are present, you are not dealing with occasional conflict. You are dealing with a system. Part 1 is volatility. The emotional climate shifts fast. Part 2 is ambiguity. You do not have stable access to reassurance, commitment, or clarity. Part 3 is contrast bonding. The best moments come right after the worst moments. Part 4 is self-erosion. You gradually stop trusting your own perceptions and you start outsourcing reality to their mood. That last one is the clincher. Because once you stop trusting yourself, you become easy to steer. You will accept explanations that do not make sense just to end the discomfort of uncertainty. You will call it being understanding, but it is actually a nervous system begging for closure. So what do you do with this without turning it into a simplistic leave them speech? You run one experiment, one, and it tells you almost everything. You stop feeding the engine. For 2 weeks you do not chase, you do not test, you do not provoke, you do not beg for clarity through emotional intensity. You communicate plainly. You set one boundary calmly. You ask one direct question and accept the answer as data, not as a referendum on your worth. Then you observe what happens. If the relationship can tolerate calm, it will adapt. It may feel awkward, but it will stabilize. If the relationship cannot tolerate calm, it will manufacture a crisis. Someone will pick a fight, disappear, accuse you of not caring, or suddenly bring up a catastrophic doubt. And not because they are evil, because the system is starving for its fuel. And that observation gives you power because it separates love from addiction. Love can survive decreased stimulation. Addiction cannot. One more thing, because people miss it. Sometimes the tension is not coming from the other person. It is coming from the attachment template inside you. You bring the engine with you. You choose partners who fit the pattern because the pattern feels like home. So the deeper win is not just identifying the tension relationship, it is identifying what your nervous system confuses for love. If your body thinks love equals unpredictability, you will keep calling anxiety spark. If your body thinks love equals earning, you will keep choosing people who withhold. If your body thinks love equals proving, you will keep staying in courtrooms disguised as relationships. The real identification question is brutally simple. Do you feel more like yourself with them or more like a strategist? If you are constantly strategizing, you are not in intimacy. You are in a game. And games can be thrilling, but they are not nourishing. So here is the close, and I want you to actually sit with it. A relationship that runs on tension will feel tight, urgent, magnetic. But the tightness is the warning label, not the promise. Pay attention to what makes you feel addicted and what makes you feel safe. If safety feels boring, that is not a sign you need more drama. It is a sign you need to retrain your nervous system. If this changed how you see your relationship, tell me in the comments which part hit hardest. And the next time things get calm and you feel the urge to create a problem, pause and ask, am I trying to connect or am I trying to feel something familiar?